The Last Rat Child by David J Thacker. Part 1. My father was the bearded lady in a circus where my mother played the part of the strongman. I tell you this now so that you can understand how subterfuge and sleight of hand have always been a part of my life. Growing up with a father whose features were dainty and who suffered, if that is the word, from gynecomastia, I thought nothing of referring to him as Mama in public, just as the rest of the circus referred to my mother, a female bodybuilder whose steroid use had shrivelled her own breasts, as Sir when abroad in a town. Then again, to refer to our home as a circus is probably too grand a term as well. It was more a collection of travelling shows. No animals, no trapeze, just a collection of like-minded folk who had no other outlet for their strangeness than to parade it for money. No more than 2 paragraphs into my story, and I am, as you can see, an unreliable narrator at best. Yet if I am to tell my story, and I feel that I do need an audience for it, I will say this to you now, and it is a promise that I will keep. I will never lie to you. Remember that. I may embroider, I may tease out or shorten my narrative, but none of it is fabricated by other than real events. I was born in a blackout, a huge thunderstorm roaring overhead. My mother, who had been hidden from public view for the last 3 months as the notion of a pregnant man was considered too weird even for our family to peddle, screamed out in pain, and immediately the lights went out. As the midwife and my father scurried to find another source of illumination, so nature provided it with a mighty bolt of lightning. One moment my mother was straining in the darkness, and the next I was there in the light, briefly energised by that white pulse in the night. I was a sickly child at first, but if ever sickness could be described as a benefit, it was there in the circus. I grew up alongside William, later Wormo, Graves, an otherwise healthy boy despite his lack of any arms or legs, and Catherine the Great Shalinsky, who was subject to gigantism and was taller than her father by the age of 6. Nobody in the circus was perfect. Nobody conformed to what was expected of them physically or mentally, and so a pale child who suffered with asthma and whose stick-thin limbs looked as if they could hardly support a twig, let alone his own body, was a perfect fit for their society. I was loved, and I loved them in turn. It was not until my 12th birthday, however, on the day that I killed my mother, that I started to realise where my path in life lay. On that fateful, and indeed fatal, day, the circus had just arrived in a new town. A hamlet, really, no more than a group of houses with intentions of community. I certainly do not remember the name of the place anyway. We had pitched up on the outskirts of the town, and, having settled, set about moving back into the lives we had left behind at our last pitch. For me, that meant a birthday party. My father was wearing a brand new dress for the occasion, and had intertwined small jewels in his beard and hair, so that, as the night drew in, he looked for all the world like a fashion-conscious constellation. Everyone brought presents, usually homemade. William gave me a small wooden statue of a man throwing a spear, which he had gnawed from wood over a period of weeks, and Catherine very daintily handed me a bouquet gathered from the blossoms of the highest branches of a tree. It was a wonderful day. My mother, whose own superior strength had sometimes put a barrier between us, bent an iron bar into the shape of a heart and presented it to me on a cushion covered in fragile lace. I remember touching that heart, feeling the coldness of the metal against the filigree of the lace, and realising that this gesture was as much a depiction of our relationship as it was of her own dual identity. I was only 12, but I was precociously intelligent. Then I spoilt it all by killing her. I hasten to add that this was not a conscious decision on my part. I felt nothing but love and warmth towards her, but on that night, at that party, my own special attribute became known, and as it appeared, so one facet of my life departed. As I touched the metal heart, I felt a great stirring of emotion within myself. I did not know where it came from or what to do with it, and I stayed for a moment, one hand on the heart, the other by my side, just revelling in the experience. Until William looked at me and shouted. He would have pointed too, no doubt, but as it was he had to make do with bouncing up and down on the spot as punctuation to his cries. My left hand, you see, was dripping electricity. Long streams of sparks tumbled from my fingertips to splash and die on the ground below. There was a slight fizzing sound in the air, and a smell as if a storm had just passed. I felt nothing. My mother, noticing this unusual behaviour, dashed forward to pull me away from the heart, assuming, along with everyone else, that it had somehow become a conductor for an electrical charge. But it was not, and as she touched me, so there was a mighty blue flash, and her muscular and tattooed body was flung across the tent. It came to rest in a heap at the feet of Lupo, our wolfman, who bent down to sniff it, and then let out a pitiful howl at the result. Everyone stared at me. For my own part, I felt as if that great outpouring of emotion that had preceded this event had robbed me of any response left to feel, which is to say, I was numb. I saw my father rush to the body of my mother, his skirts lifted as he ran, and then he crumpled at her side, becoming a mass of crinoline and hair, the jewels in his beard now twinkling alongside the tears on his face. I registered dimly the space that had been made around me by my friends. In truth, I didn't know what to do. So I passed out. After that, things were different. I was still loved, but until people could work out how to do that safely, the love was held at a distance. I was not without remorse for what I had unwittingly done to my mother, but it was my father that I felt for the most. Trapped in widow's weeds for the rest of his life, his beard turned grey from that day forward, and instead of combing it and plaiting it as usual, he left it to grow unchecked. His attitude to me was tinged with sadness, but paradoxically he also became much more tactile. Often he would clutch me to his bosom and hug me as if he never wanted me to go away. I enjoyed this newfound closeness, but in later years I came to realise the embraces were nothing but failed suicide attempts, his way of trying to get me to blast him to that same oblivion I had sent my mother to. As it was, I did not blast anyone to anywhere for quite some years. Gradually, the circus people came to accept me again, and in time the curious incident passed into folklore. We could even joke about it, out of the hearing of my father. It was deemed a freak event, no pun intended, and unrepeatable. Alas, we were wrong.
Thank you for watching that reading as part of the Glasgow 2024 Indie Author Reading Library. Please check out the other readings on the YouTube channel. Check the author's links attached to this video, and check out Glasgow 2024's links also in the text to the video. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.